generic claims don't stand out. People just skip right over them. We've seen all the messaging around so-and-so reduces inflammation or flushes toxins, and we just ignore it. Introduce a new concept or something that is a mechanism that grabs someone's attention and creates that curiosity. That's how you can start to reshape how people think about a problem that they may be overlooking.
All right, today's a special one because I've got my co-host with me and I get to play the interviewer, and she's going to just drop value bombs. This is Kira Hug. She's one of the senior copywriters at our agency and has been a copywriter for over 15 years. I'm going to turn it over to her to share a little bit about what we're going to get into today.
You know, the whole idea is really taking not just principles, but taking real ads that we're working on and that I'm writing or, colleagues of mine are writing today in the agency to show what's working and what's not working. So we're not just basing this on like random theories, but on what is actually happening, what I'm a part of, or what I'm learning from other people in the agency. So the whole idea is to give you something useful, and I'm excited to do that with you.
Let's be direct here. Like, these ads have generated millions and millions in revenue for clients. We're talking about some of the core principles and some of the core formats that are literally driving 7, if not, 8 figures in revenue for clients over the last few months, right?
Yeah, and we want to share as much as we can, right? Share everything that's working and all those details and not hold back, because it's so important to talk about what's working today because it shifts so quickly. And so it's important to share those lessons.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to learn some more from you. Let's dive into those lessons right now.
Yeah, let's jump in.
Awesome.
About brands and messaging, every pet brand will say something like, your dog's ears are dirty, clean your dog's ears. And it's just noise. We don't stop scrolling. We just continue with our day. But if you as a marketer say, hey, there's this bend in the ear canal where your dog's gunk gets trapped, and here's how you fix it, that's what grabs people's attention. That's what makes people stop. So one of our copywriters, Sean, shout out to Sean, created a mechanism called the L-shaped ear canal. And that was a mechanism that actually allowed that ad to scale past $1 million, well beyond $1 million. So if you think about like why did that work? It's because the mechanism changed how people understood the problem they were dealing with. Before they were just thinking, my dog's ears are dirty. I don't know why this is happening. How do I fix it? And then after they understood the mechanism, they understood that there is the bend in the ear canal where everything gets trapped. So they were able to think about the problem and reframe it in a new way so it actually made sense. And so that's a little bit about what we're going to talk about today, is how to use frameworks so we can scale our ads and go deeper into mechanisms and other layers that we're going to dig into today.
Awesome. So, just to summarize that, it sounds like I remember having a dog. I don't have a dog right now, but I remember having a dog, and it was like, why are their ears always dirty? And so it's something like easy, simple, digestible that kind of reframes the problem. It's like, oh my God, that makes sense. And you want to know more.
Yeah, okay. For sure. Yeah. Start with the mechanism because that was one example, but our agency is playing around with many different mechanisms to see what's sticking right now, and we have just some trends and patterns that we can share too. So
cool.
We can start and then go a little bit deeper beyond that.
What other topics are we going to talk about? So that was a great example of the mechanisms. Just high level, what are the other topics that you want to cover today? Because I know you've got a few that are directly connected to some of, the high scale ads that we've got at the agency right now.
Yeah. So the other one is creating narrative formats that aren't typical and don't trigger the ad reflex where we put our guard up. So basically how to create that grab us and feel authentic. So our guard drops and we actually open up to new ideas. So that's one we'll talk about. And then we'll also talk about how psychology changes through the reluctant messenger. So the reluctant messenger is somebody who maybe didn't want to share a solution with you. It's less obvious. There's more at stake. So if they share a solution with you, you're way more likely to listen to them because they have a lot more skin in the game and it's almost vulnerable for them to share a solution with you. So we're going to talk about how you do that and why that actually works.
Oh man, that last one sounds so good because it's like you don't feel like you're being sold to.
Right. It's just less obvious.
Yeah.
So the last one will be credibility sequencing. So we all know credibility is important. And there's basic way to do it, where you may even bring in a doctor as an expert, but we're going to go deeper than that and talk about how you can sequence credibility so it's exponential. And before you even introduce an expert, an influencer, or a doctor, you've already built trust with your audience. So that's
Awesome.
4
Awesome.
components we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so it sounds like we're giving a super big value dump of like the way that you can hijack people's brains to feel like they're not being sold to and actually pay attention to your ads. And that's probably why they scale so much.
Exactly. So yes, it's not tricking people, but it's helping them with content that feels authentic to them, like something they want to share and pay attention to, something they want to share with a parent because it feels valuable.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, let's dive in. I'll turn it over to you and then we'll keep this thing moving.
Okay. All right. So let's start with the mechanism. We already teased it a little bit with L-shaped ear canal. So this is why mechanisms are so important. You know, we already know generic claims don't stand out. People just skip right over them. We've seen all the messaging around so-and-so reduces inflammation or flushes toxins, and we just ignore it. Introduce a new concept like this is something that releases the L trap, or something that is a mechanism that grabs someone's attention and creates that curiosity. That's how you can start to reshape how people think about a problem that they may be overlooking. And so this is something we've experimented with in many different ads across multiple offers, and we've come up with mechanisms like L trap, K bend, poop trap, bubble trap, C track, O clamp. And so you may notice a pattern with all of those. It's pretty simple, pulling out a letter from the alphabet, or even just a shape, right? A bubble, something. It's almost like elementary. It's like going back to elementary school and keeping the mechanism so simple that a kindergartner could figure it out and visualize the mechanism because it's that simple. So that is the formula that's working really well for us in our mechanisms across the agency right now.
So it's marrying that letter or that simple thing, like you said, bubble, with something else that almost sounds kind of scary. I mean, I think I remember you said L trap or something like that. What's the, I guess, the formula for that second part?
Yeah, exactly. So it's marrying the shape or letter with something that is, I guess you could say it's usually scary because it is attached to the problem. So it is something that is memorable as far as like it's a trap or a clamp or something that, yeah, connotes some type of problem that you want to fix and solve, because this is a problem mechanism. So it is helping people understand why this problem started in the first place. But it is a simple formula when you just pair the two together, and it's very adding a lot of language or messaging to the mechanism to overcomplicate it. Also really visual, so I think that's why it works well for people who are busy and oversaturated, to just be able to picture real quickly the mechanism and what it looks like so they can actually visualize the problem in their body and where it exists, right? So as soon as you think of a C track in your knee joint, it's really easy to picture what that looks like in your knee and how that's happening. Or if you're thinking about an L shape, like we said, in your ear canal, we can quickly think about that in a new way. It doesn't take a lot of effort or work to get to that point. So the simplicity is what makes it work. And you can actually create this on your own if you just start with a couple action steps. Like first, find the bottleneck. You know, think about where the problem occurs physically in the body. And this could work for any problem. If you're talking about joints, if you're talking about heart problems, constipation, where does that problem originate from? And think about the shape of that body part. So if it starts in a part of my stomach, can I go deeper into my stomach and think about the different shapes, different letters that I could use to visualize that part of the body where the problem starts? And that, again, came up with those concepts like L-bend, C-trap, O-ring, bubble trap, because it was based in science. It wasn't just making it up. It was actually based on like, what is this body part and what is happening to it? And then how can we just simplify the messaging so people get it? And we're not talking in medical speak or using scientific terms that might just go over their head or tune them out. And then if you can
I try to make one?
Yeah.
Like if
Yeah.
I was gonna, so like I'm thinking about, somebody's watching this and they're like, okay, so how do I do this? And you give away the like actionable steps to go ahead and do
Yeah.
this. And I was trying to do it in my mind. So like if I'm thinking about, you said choose a body part, I'm thinking about neck pain, right? And then I think like, okay, I want to grab a letter, something that's probably really simple to like vertebra is the letter I, and I could just the eye clamp, and you can pretty simply come up with something that's like, and clamp is kind of the word, like you said, of like, it's so simple, it's so easy. That's awesome. And that would
That was
work.
amazing. You passed. Yeah. Exactly. Because I mean, that quickly allows me to picture the vertebrae and allows me to understand maybe there's a compression problem. Allows me to understand like what is actually happening to that body part. And then adding clamp to it puts that pressure on it and creates that tension. So that would work really well. Well done. I feel like you could just bust
Yeah,
out some.
let's test it. Let's test it.
Yeah. So you can just apply this and work on it and create your own mechanisms for your own offers and just give it a try. The cool thing is that once you have the mechanism, again, like L trap or whatever, C track, you can apply that and test it against different demographics. Because most likely what resonates, 35-year-old, the problem mechanism will also resonate with other demographics. You may just talk about it slightly differently, change some of the other messaging. So you can test it across different demographics to really scale your ads. So that's a way you can expand beyond. So that covers mechanism. Like there's a lot to take your ads in a different direction and test different mechanisms in your offers.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that one. That one was super simple. I feel like a pro. Like I got it like so quickly. Is yeah, anyone can do this.
We could ask our children, like you could ask your phone,
Yeah.
come up with a visual. And again, it doesn't have to be a letter of the alphabet. It could be just a fun shape, a star or whatever it is. And you can ask a child to come up with it and they would be able to help you out very easily. We
Yeah,
overcomplicate
yeah. Reminds me of
it.
that copywriting principle of like make sure it's in like third grade language or whatever, that it's so easy. You just don't have to think about it. It's not that you're thinking people are dumb. It's that we just want it to be so easy to digest.
That's a good point because we talk about language and making sure it's at, seventh grade level, depending on your audience, but we don't talk about the concepts. Like, are the concepts basic enough so that people will get it visually in their head? So I think that is something we should think about more often, just the visual side of it. All right. So next part is talking about narrative formats that resonate with people, build trust, and ultimately convert. And so one of my favorite ones is found footage. I love Blair Witch, and there's the whole Blair Witch effect. When that movie came out, people thought it was real. They had no idea it was just like a movie with actors and talent. And it's partly because of the amateur feel, bad lighting, real conversation, shaky camera. And that's something that we can do in our ads to build that authenticity and build that trust and pull people in so they aren't automatically thinking this is an ad before they even jump into it. And so that's something that I think about often with the ads is how can I make it feel like something someone may have found, almost like something they shouldn't even be watching in the first place. It's almost like triggers the voyeur in you to just want to see what it is, even though you're not supposed to be watching it.
Yeah, I'm so happy you said that word because I was chatting with this guy recently at another agency who was talking about these ads where you're like watching somebody else do something. And I think the ad that he was sharing was somebody recording a girl putting on like they're like temporary nails, right? You don't have to paint your nails. You can just put on these stickers and then there's like this light that you use that makes anyway. And so somebody was like filming her do it in class and it felt like voyeurism. And that's what I said. I was like, oh, the voyeurism in this is da da da. And that's how the chat got started. And so I'm happy you said voyeurism because it was exactly what was going through my mind of like thinking to that conversation and how it aligns with what you're describing and kind of man on the street interviews too, like street interview ads. Isn't it a little bit like that of like, oh, I'm randomly just walking here and then I bump into this person. I know we have an ad that's like that's scaling. We're like bump into this person at the grocery store. Hey, aren't you the lady who da 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 da?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It's putting yourself somewhere where you definitely don't belong. And it's, we're curious creatures. We want to know what people are saying, especially behind closed doors. And so that may be a grocery store. It could also be an ad that looks like a text message chain. And so that's a format that's working well, we'll dig a little bit deeper into that, but a group chat. And so that's one where it feels like found footage because it's a group chat conversation that you can turn into an ad. It also could be videos that are shared between two people. I mean, who doesn't want to watch a private video that wasn't shared with you intentionally? And so that we've experimented with where someone has a problem and then they message their group chat and someone randomly responds to them in the group chat. Oftentimes they don't even know who they are, and they send them a video where they share how they solved that same problem. And like, it triggers all of our curiosity to see what people are sharing. It also builds that trust because you're like, well, this person to share the solution with a stranger, there's got to be something here. And so I think that way your concept really does work. It could also work as this is less of tapping into the voyeuristic tendency, but the narrative that works really well across our agency is the two-person dynamic. And the example is a two-person podcast. So we've seen a lot of success with that. And it works so well because you have two people and two people. So you're able to play with the problem a little bit more and have one person be the reluctant believer and the skeptic. And then the other person is the person who actually solved the problem. And that allows you to really speak to the audience's skepticism, their hesitations, because you can have that one skeptic on that podcast who's pushing back constantly, is like, I don't know, I've heard that before, or I've already tried that. That sounds like BS. And it allows you to really get into the mind of your audience to really help them work through all of those thoughts and hesitations that are popping through their head and work through it within, a 3-minute, 2-minute ad that's a podcast format. So that's worked really well for us.
Yeah, the second person is almost just there to overcome the objections that are in the viewer's mind. Or to throw up the objections, and then that allows the main speaker to overcome them. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. And especially build the trust between the two of them. Oftentimes they're old buddies. Some of our talent that works really well in these two-person podcast ads, they're like in their 50s or 60s, they're old friends. They clearly trust each other. So if you buy into that trust that they've already established because you're part of that conversation, you're like, well, they seem like best friends. So if this person's handling all the objections and telling his friend to trust him, I trust him because they've clearly been friends for 30 years. Luckily, we've got great talent. That friendship work really well as a format that across multiple offers too.
Yeah. So you mentioned podcasts. Have we done this on other ads? I don't see all of the ads, but I know I've seen quite a bit of the podcast ones. I'm thinking of a different location that could kind of emulate the same thing, like two buddies on a park bench. And it's almost like that back and forth skit, two guys in a car, even the seems like a call, like a video call, right? Something like that. Have we done any other formats like that?
We have done, and what I was going to get to is a FaceTime chat. Again, if you have two people on a podcast, you just can put them into a FaceTime conversation, which changes the dynamic a little bit. And maybe it's like less credibility because they aren't speaking on a podcast, but it's personal and vulnerable that they're talking about a problem over FaceTime. And because it's behind closed doors, you may trust them more, because why would they share this with their friend over FaceTime if it wasn't true? So FaceTime format is something we've experimented with that is working well. If you can create that visually so the ad looks like an authentic FaceTime conversation, not an ad, that's another way you can take that two-person dynamic. Like you said, put them in a car together. Where else can you put these two people who are able to kind of address these hesitations and objections together?
Yeah, I love that, because that's one of my favorite things to do, and something I've talked quite a bit about online is just, if you've got something that's winning, make sure to adjust the format. So if you've got that two-person podcast that's winning, put those two people in a car, or even if it's two different people, because again, we hear, I think 2025 has been big. And I talk about this in the 2025-2026 episode that I did of, trends and predictions, is the need for creative diversity and just how big that conversation was this year. And so it's like, look, you've got something that's winning, change the format. So take that two-person podcast, make it an in the car skit, make it two buddies on a park bench, make it a FaceTime video, any way that you can emulate that two-person dialogue naturally, authentically, and like you said, avoiding making it seem like you're being sold to and making it look like not an ad, but organic content is like excellent.
Yeah, that's a great reminder, even just for the two-person podcast. A couple of them I have, just take them to a different format. There's no reason not to try that. Okay, and the next one we can talk about, we already touched on. So it's the group chat format. And this has worked across multiple offers, and group chats are the place we go to in real life where people recommend and share advice and get really vulnerable and personal. So this is a format that people are used to because they're using it in their everyday. And so it's something that's familiar to them, and we don't have to add a lot of context. A typical structure for a group chat format would be the first person opening up the conversation and talking about the problem. I've been constipated for 6 months and I'm starting to get really worried something's actually wrong. And then
And is this actually like showing the UI of the chat?
You could do that, but we've just used video, so showing the person saying this. So we've
Okay. Yeah.
Number one is introducing the problem. We have also used visuals of them texting and have the text on the screen too to show that context. And then you show the second person when you introduce, the person who actually went through the problem and has a solution. Works because you can have this bridge where the person with the problem can say something like, yeah, this random woman from my soccer team group chat shared this private video with me. And then you share the private video, which again, like we all want to see the private video. What did they share? Why did they feel compelled to share this video with you? It must be important. And the video message is from the person who has the solution, and they have, right, that's like the meat of the ad is, I had this problem. It's usually a horrific story, and here's how I fixed it. And like, please, fix this, do not wait. And then you always end the ad going back to the original person who had the problem to begin with, and they take action with you. So they're like, I clicked immediately. Here's what happened. I'm dropping the link below for you. And so it's, again, using two people to really strengthen the message and solve the problem and kind of reinforce each other's messaging too throughout the ad.
Nice. It made me think of, oh my God, they meant to DM me, or they meant to DM someone in the group, but like someone just, that like the error, or not error, but like text the wrong person kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Oh my God, my mom meant to send this to me, or meant to send this to someone else or whatever. But like, yeah, this lady in this group meant to send it to someone else or something like that. Of like, oh, she sent. Anyway, I think I wonder if that, like, that kind of is. Yeah, exactly. That would be an interesting spin to throw on that, because that immediately would make me want to, because I guess the exclamation of like, oh my God, you won't believe this, always makes us want to know what happened. Yeah.
Yes. There was one I experimented with where it was like, I dropped this by accident in my office group chat. Like, whoops, my boss, but someone did respond, and here's what they said. So you can make a mistake and make it a little more entertaining and also real, because many of us make these mistakes all the time. So it's relatable. And FaceTime format, that was the last narrative format that I wanted to touch on. And I think the key thing is, if you want to experiment with the FaceTime format between two people having a private conversation where they're talking about the problem and a solution, is like pretty obvious, but you want to make it look like a real FaceTime conversation. So you want to make sure it's, kind of shaky, as if someone's holding up their own phone. They might be eating food, so like throughout the ad. We have our talent, like they're usually nibbling on food. Directions we give them, like, make sure you're walking around your house and you're not in one place. Just like how you would look if you're having a normal conversation with a friend on FaceTime, to make sure it's also going to be written differently, because there's a lot of real events like, hey, wait, it's my cat just like my cat is, hang on, I got to let my dog out. So the script is going to be different too, to make it feel more realistic. You're going to be talking over each other. And again, the framing might be a little bit like moving around a little bit off, but not too shaky where people are distracted. So that can make that format believable and authentic, so tune in and actually watch the whole video.
Yeah, and touching on that question I had previously about UI, this is one that actually looks like the UI of a FaceTime, or is it kind of shot in like third person where you're seeing somebody hold the phone up to their face, or you're actually seeing the UI of a FaceTime call?
It looks like you're in the FaceTime chat with
Yeah, okay,
them.
cool. Yeah.
see the two people on the screen at all times. And you can even see just like everything you would normally see if you're FaceTiming.
Yep.
And
Yep. Yeah, I've seen those.
okay.
Nice.
Yeah, and so moving away from narrative, I just want to touch on some what we're calling advanced psychological patterns. And so this is one is kind of simple, but it's the idea of the reluctant messenger. And so this is something where people are more likely to tune in and trust the messenger who's delivering a solution and talking about the problem. If it's someone who they want to share, they're reluctant to share the information because it's vulnerable or because it's so personal. So the script might share something like, hey, I don't know if this is my place to share it, but I tried this and it worked for me. They're just using the script to really show hesitation. It may be because the person recommending the solution, doesn't know the other person very well. And it makes it more believable than someone jealous and is like, here's the solution. You got to try this. This worked for me. Super easy. Because this is more believable. This is how this mirrors real life and how we prepare a solution with even a friend or a family member because it's so personal and we have to be so vulnerable to share that. And so using that type of frame just is a good way to build that trust before you even introduce the solution.
Yeah, it reminded me of how I think nowadays we're so numb to a lot of this UGC content or like even, pseudo influencer where like there was such an explosion of UGC that kind of like non-influencer people are getting paid to make videos. And the first thing they open with is like, oh my God, this thing solved all my problems. And it's just like, oh my God.
Yeah.
But if you show up saying like, you know what, I didn't really want to say this, or like, I've never told anybody this, it's like a little bit of a secret or a little, it lowers the defenses. So I love that one. That one's great.
Yeah, or some other scripts would be like, I almost didn't watch this, but thank God I did. Referring to someone else who you may not even know well, but like this woman who I maybe met once at a soccer game sent me this private message. So glad I watched it. So yeah, that reluctance does grab
A
people.
woman behind me in the line at the grocery store, something like that.
Yeah, yes. And I mean, that's how real life works too. Those
Yeah.
conversations are expected and helpful. So adding that reluctance can really help build that trust in your ads. Last part we're getting to, I believe this is the last part before we kind of pull this all together, is we talked about with credibility and sequencing the credibility. So by the time you get to the expert or like what you think is the credibility booster, you've already built the trust. So it's a no-brainer at that point. And so there's kind of like a layered approach to doing this rather than just dropping in with, this is the doctor who recommends this product. There's like a 3-step layering process where you can just start by using the talent and the influencer to share the problem to just mirror it back to the audience. Like that's pretty obvious and basic. Like you just want to reflect back to the audience so they're thinking, this is my problem, this is me, this person is me. And that just creates an opening so that we can start to build that trust and get to the second layer, which is a soft authority introduction. So it's almost like before we get to the real hero who's going to save the day, which again, for an example would be like the doctor who created the product or who sponsors the product. You want to have someone else introduce and refer to that doctor who also is trusted. And a way we've done that in many of our scripts is by referring to some other expert who gave really good advice to talk to that doctor. So for instance, in one of the 2-person podcast scripts, one of the guys said, hey, I went to my PT. It's this army guy, kind of a tough guy. And he pulled me aside and told me, before you get cut open and have knee surgery, there's this doctor you have to see. So before we're even getting to the doctor, like who is the doctor? What did the doctor say? We're already building that credibility and that trust because clearly, you trust your PT. Especially we added, an army guy, like there's trust built there. The person pulled them aside, probably reluctantly too, to say, hey, before you do this, you got to see this doctor. And so now we've already built this trust. So by the time we get to the hard credentials of like, this is the doctor, this is, the universities they work at, Harvard Athletics, blah, 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 throwing all those credibility boosters out there, we've already built enough trust so that people don't tune us out because it's really easy to tune out all those big names and all those credibility boosters. And because we see so much of it and it's overwhelming and we're like, yeah, that's probably not even true. But if we build the trust before we even introduce that expert, people are more likely to kind of continue to believe and trust the entire credibility story that you're sharing. And so that's a sequence that's working really well, is just like, how can we layer in the trust and the credibility throughout the ad? So we're not just dropping it in at one point in the ad and expecting people to just believe everything we're saying.
Yeah, it really aligns with what you would expect as like a real life situation of, oh yeah, this person kind of pulled me aside. I mean, imagine a lot of people are thinking, I think you said knees, but whatever surgery, they're going through this thing of like, hey, before you go into the knife, reconsider, go see an extra specialist, something like that. So whatever it is, it doesn't have to necessarily be that niche or that exact thing, but like, hey, before you go make this big drastic decision, go ahead and go seek out more information. Get a second opinion.
Exactly. And it might be for somebody who doesn't have skin in the game. Like
Yeah.
it's a nurse, or it is a friend or a cousin or a neighbor who just is doing it because they've been there and they want to help you, but they're not going to benefit off of it. So that builds that
Yeah.
trust.
Yeah. It'd be so different if it was like the PT was pitching some program,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah, the PT was selling me the program. But it's like, this person's probably going to the PT for years. And so you almost build these characters so they become real and not just a credibility booster. So that's how we do this. And if we want to bring it all together, you can just kind of run through a couple of questions to help you think about your next ad using one of these, I guess we can say, principles that we shared today, one of these ideas, concepts from today, so that you can actually apply it as you scale your ads. And so one question would be, do I have a mechanism people can easily picture? If not, you may want to go back and work on building out your mechanism. Another question could be, does this feel like real life, or does this feel like a polished ad? Or is there a hesitation before I share the solution? And can I talk through that hesitation? That's where the 2-person podcast format could come into play. All those other narrative formats can come into play. So you could address hesitations before you even get to the solution. And the last question is just, how am I introducing my expert and the credibility? Am I layering it, or am I just kind of plopping it into the ad and expecting people to just trust everything I'm saying? And so if you're not doing one of those things, you can dive deeper into this episode and really start to kind of execute differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Super powerful questions to like take this to a framework of you're sitting down to do some new ads, and it's like, okay, I love the like layers deeper of the expert. It's like, I'm not introducing a person that is maybe the sponsor of the product. A doctor on supplements is a really common one, right? Or the big name behind the sponsorship of a product, but like somebody else that's indicating that and taking it layers deeper. I really like that one. The mechanism that you can picture is so good. I think that one's awesome for sure. I mean, because now I'm an expert at it now. The eye clamp. Anyway, we're going to test it. But then the last one, I think, like, as you go through those questions, that last one being so important of, does this feel like an ad or does it feel like real life? We went through quite a few examples, and I think some of the ones that I threw up as they were just like coming up in my head listening to you described how that would transpire in real life. You drop the message in the wrong chat, the lady behind me in the grocery store. So I think that is such a core tenet of these principles that you brought to us today.
Yeah, it's really thinking about what's happening behind closed doors, what people want to pay attention to that they feel like they may not have access to, and giving them access to those conversations behind closed doors. People will tune into that. So let's create that for them.
Awesome. So as we bring it all together, like, what's the big takeaway that you really, if you had to, give people a punchline with all of these principles, like why are we considering all of this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing is just your creativity is your strategy. And so just be very intentional about how you're setting up the creative from the beginning before you write the script, before you even think about talent. Is what approach are you going to take format wise to really build that authenticity and make it simple and clear with those mechanisms so people just get it quickly and have that trust from the beginning, so you don't have to earn it at the end of your ad. It's just baked into it from the first few seconds of the ad. So I would challenge you, if you're listening, to just apply one principle from today. Choose the one that really resonates or excited you and test it against your control.
Take what's already working, execute one of these principles on that ad. You're gonna get more creative variety out of it. So there's the call back to that diversity problem that is currently in the marketplace, and see if it outperforms your control. And if not, test again because you probably did something wrong because these things work. These are all from ads that are scaling over $1 million a month across multiple months. So month over month, $1 million ads. So these principles definitely work. Kira knows what she's talking about. So definitely go test this stuff. Awesome. Anything else,
Good.
Kira?
No, let's just do it. I'd love to hear from people who are testing and like let us know what's working. And yeah, we'd love to share.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you do test this stuff, you listen to this episode, you can tell us in the comments which one of these principles you plan on testing, or come back after you test it and let us know how it went. Tell us how right we were because we know this stuff works. And if you're not already following along here with the Scaling Lab, go ahead and click that subscribe button and consider hitting that notification bell to get notified when new episodes drop wherever they drop. And thanks for being with us. We'll see you in a future episode.